My guest today is Nickerson, who is an entrepreneur, lawyer, philanthropist, and martial artist with diverse background in law, business development, and finance. With a cross-industry experience from entrepreneurial startups to large law firms and in the industry of large public corporations. He is an expert on leadership, employment, staffing, and workplace issues and opportunities. In today's episode, he and I talk about his latest book, Negotiations as a Martial Art, Techniques to Master the Art of Human Exchange, that teaches you to develop a negotiation style where you get what you want and people want to deal with you again and again. Welcome to LIFEOLOGY.
Thank you, James.
I am really looking forward to this. We had a wonderful talk in the pre-call a couple days ago, and I got to learn so much about you, so I cannot wait for my listeners to hear all the things that you get to teach us. But before I get started, how did you even discover that you had this gift for negotiation? Because it's a niche that many people don't have.
It's interesting because I discovered it just by doing it. Right. I remember I have vivid memories of lying about my age in order to get a paper route at the age of 11. You were supposed to be 12. And back then, kids didn't have proof of ID and there was no internet and nobody really could check how old you were. And so I got a paper route. And when I got the paper route, I became a salesman. And so I would go door to door in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, trying to sell the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, which was the morning newspaper, to people in the neighborhood. And I would always, negotiate with them about, hey, listen, why don't you take the Sunday paper, and kind of sell them. So to be selling and negotiating go hand in hand. I remember one guy telling me, he said, someday you're going to be a great salesman because you come here, I've never bought anything from you. And you come here and you try to sell me the holiday paper. And then I know what you're going to do. Because I can tell you're going to then try and sell me, the weekly paper. And then when I take that, you're going to sell me the daily paper. And ultimately, he took all of them. After he told me, he said, you know what? So anyway. So young age.
Yeah, it is so funny because I think everybody that I've spoken to has something that they experienced when they were younger, but they perhaps didn't realize it. Maybe you did, but they didn't realize it would become like their specialty, which is really cool at that in itself. How did you take everything though? So, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, unlike Tiger Woods or somebody like that, I didn't have a coach or anything. So, my dad was a professor and very, very high IQ, no EQ. My mother would send to the grocery store to get milk and he'd come back with eggs, the ultimate absent-minded type professor. So I think she had high hopes for me. And I definitely pivoted off my father.
That is hysterical. Yeah, so you definitely have the high IQ and the EQ, it sounds like, which is really important. I wanted to ask you, though, so for overall, when it comes to everything you've done, so you took martial arts, you've took all your business development, you've taken your law, you're as a lawyer, you've done all these things. And how did you find the intersect to say, this is specifically what my quote calling is, or that this is what I want to teach people?
It's interesting. I've been fascinated by soft skills as opposed to hard skills. And when I spoke to the Hubble telescope scientists about listening, NASA paid me, believe it or not. It was really cool. It was a series at Johns Hopkins called Hard Science, Soft Skills. And when I spoke to them, I said, as I think about it, I have degrees in philosophy, English, law, and business. I'm a walking soft skill expert. And early on, I had, in my early career, job as a corporate lawyer at Union Pacific Railroad as a corporate mergers and acquisitions attorney. And you would think, that, hey, technical skills are everything. And I'm not that old, but I'm old enough that my first boss fought at Battle of the Bulge. And he was a fascinating guy, a very wise guy. And he's the one who told me, Bill said to me, listen, 85% of whether you succeed, how you succeed is going to be based on your soft skills. Things like selling, listening, negotiating, more so than your technical skills. So I kept gravitating towards it more and more. I initially did not have great soft skills. And he's the one, that conversation I had with Bill was kind of a corrective conversation because I was so intense and I was so into the technical side and I was kind of oblivious to the people around me and didn't care. And so it was kind of a turnaround for me that I guess I felt like when I was young and selling. Exactly. So it was like he and then I tapped back into that youthful paper Paperboy.
That's funny. but that is really important though, because overall, without the soft skills, so maybe like you said, you explained a little bit, but people who don't know what a soft skill is, it's just basically their interpersonal connection. So how you connect with other people, how you're able to maybe read the room, how you understand the nuances of what they say, what they do, how they sit, all that as well. That's something that is what we're talking about today. And that's part of, as you're going to teach us, the art of negotiation. Overall, though, it is important because I know for me, when I used to be a clinical director for different things, if I came into my meetings and I was just right with business and talking about the clinical stuff, I found that just like you, I had kind of a come to Jesus meeting with with the regional director. He's like, James, you need to be more mindful of that. I'm like, what? I don't understand. But it's so true. Without that joining or that connection with someone, it doesn't matter what you say or do. If you're not emotionally connected, and I don't mean like in a really hardcore emotions, but connected in some interpersonal way, you're really not going to get what you want. So let's transition into this. Let's talk about negotiations as a martial art, techniques to master the art of human exchange. I can't wait to hear more about it. Tell us the concept of this book.
Yeah, the concept of the book is that martial arts provides an experience of intense exchange between, let's say, two human beings for now, to keep it simple, even though it can get more complex. Yeah. And martial arts, some people confuse with MMA and fighting, whereas it's just a tool for those activities. But really, martial arts is about sensing the other person. It's how you interface with that person, and you interface in a very, very intense way. If you don't pay attention, if I don't pay attention to the conversation with James, it's like, okay, maybe I missed something. If I don't pay attention and James and I are squared off and we're practicing techniques, one of us gets hurt, one of us gets hit. So your body and your mind engage in a very deep way. And if you take it deeper, the great martial artists are masterful at this in kind of engagement. They can see things before they happen. They can feel you moving before you move. They sense what you're going to do next, and they can disappear themselves when you go to touch them. So it's those kinds of skills that if you bring them into a business context, you're way ahead of the game, because everybody in a business context, in a business negotiation, is full of tension. There's something at stake. You could get promoted. You could get fired. You could look like an idiot if you don't do things right. And so the truth of the matter is, inside of you is a whole bundle of noise. And because of that noise, you can't feel anyone else. And so what the martial arts has, that same kind of noise, that same kind of tension, that same level of threat. There's somebody who could hurt you. There's someone who could hit you. And so you're full of noise. And what you train yourself to do in martial arts, and you can carry it over to the business world or interpersonal world, is how to silence yourself. And there's all this writing about mindfulness. So, and that's great. I support all kind of, reflective, contemplative activities. But what I'm talking about is it's not just like, okay, hum quietly for a while. There are techniques. there are techniques that you can bring into the conference room.
Yes. Tell us. I'm sorry, that was hysterical. Tell me some of the techniques that my listeners can use right now, because I really want to corroborate what you're saying. I mean, I'm someone as well who's very mindful of that, and so it is important to be aware of that, because you'll tell us the techniques in a second. But I was reading the cover, the jacket cover, and you talk about people don't really know what they want. You think they know what they want, but they don't really know what they want. And so sometimes I'm sure all their bundles of nerves get in the way. And so what they want kind of changes over time or in that conversation. And so they really don't get to the meat of what they really need or want in a negotiation.
Yeah. So there's several things at work there. Let's start with what do you want? I mean, I'm of the opinion, and you're trained in this more than I am, but this has been my experience, that adults, what you're getting when you see an adult is someone who is repeating behaviors that worked for them up until that point. So things they were rewarded for, things they were punished for. And so in many ways, you're just looking at a kid that's been shaped a little bit. And then you think of how much you thought about what you wanted when you were a kid. You're just like, I want this. I want to use a grab for everything. And I don't think we have any training in how to really get at what we want. And that's because we don't spend enough time with the word why. Why? Everything's what? Everything's what? I want this. You go into a business deal negotiation. I want this. I want that. Well, why? Why do you want it? And
What's the
so many
point?
times
Sure.
I found, representing clients or myself, that once you got done talking to them, hey, that isn't exactly what they want, or they think they want this, but if they had that, that would be the same. And those kinds of techniques. So the number one technique in becoming a better negotiator is learning to love the word why. Why? And engaging beforehand with someone and say, I want this. And let them play with you a little bit and say, well, why do you want that? What's your goal? What's your objective? Those kinds of questions, the why questions, we just don't ask enough. We're over busy, we're over committed, and so we just go from what to what to what to what, and never hit the why. So that's a major technique. Is have you asked yourself why lately, and get your friends, or if you're representing someone else, maybe you're a broker, maybe you're a lawyer, maybe you're an accountant. You should sit with them and just grill them a little bit. And you should do it till they're uncomfortable, and you should explain to them, listen, now that you're getting uncomfortable, I know you're thinking. You're really going to start thinking, because that's when it happens. Up until then, there's a shell, there's a bubble, and you're not getting through. So the why and that examination process. Is think of it like, and I talk a lot about green eggs and ham. Green eggs and ham. Listen, it was the fourth most popular book from 1960 to 2000 for children's books.
Wow.
And if you look at that, look how much that, I think children's books really shape our behavior. And so those Dr. Seuss books are not just like cute, colorful pictures. They're really, really foundational. So if you look at Green Eggs and Ham, and it's been used as a sales training book before.
Really?
Do you want green eggs and ham? Do you want them here or there? Do you want it in a fox? Do you want it with a mouse in a house? And it's a real total 100% no open-ended question. So when we talk about asking why, we talk about a technique is, instead of pushing someone to yes or no's, which in sales we call closed probes, you have to get them talking. So we want to know, and this is my new book called Blue Tofu Hash, which I'm working on. It's a children's book.
Oh, awesome.
So somebody says, I don't like green eggs and ham. But in that book, nobody ever says, what don't you like? Is it the green? Or don't you eat ham? Or don't you eat eggs? There's none of those questions asked. So nothing ever happens except he wears the guy down. The guy finally says, okay, I'll eat it. Okay, I like them. If you'll go away. I mean, it's sort of like a bad insurance salesman coming into your house, and the only way you can get them out is to say, okay, I'll take the most basic life insurance you have. If only I never have to see you again. But so another one besides the why is open-ended questions. If it has to be yes or no, you're creating tension. And there are times when you want to do that, when you're gaining some success and you want to sort of distinguish, but to have that as your style, that's very common in business meetings and negotiation sessions. And probably the third really simple technique that people can adopt right away is to cleanse themselves. Now, this is not like humming for 5 minutes, to the latest app that will calm you down. I have a simple one, okay? Because people like you and me and your listeners, we have like 100 things going on. We're not doing one thing. We're doing 100 things. And there's 150 things to do associated with those 100 things. And so what we do is, that's all in our heads, and we bring that to the meeting. I tell people, the one thing you bring to every meeting, to every negotiation, is yourself. Yeah. That's the one thing you bring. And there's a lot of implications to that. But one is that you bring everything that's in your head. So this is simple. You don't need an app. Just take paper, and I like paper for this, but you could do it electronically. I like paper for it because it's just more meaningful. I write down before a meeting or a negotiation everything that pops into my head.
Oh,
I have to call my mother. I have to get ready for an interview with James. I have to, all these things, anything that's on my mind, and I write them all down, and then I take that piece of paper, and I consciously set it aside before I go into the meeting. And that's not complicated. It's simple, but it's highly effective. And then you can walk in empty. And the power of walking in empty is, I can feel you. If I come in with tension, I can't feel you. I can't get through myself to feel you.
Wow. I've actually never heard anyone say that before. And it makes perfect sense. I mean, we talk about, we talked about emptying, but a lot of times people talk about being present. Well, the point is being present is, like you said, emptying out your mind. So I really like that technique because as we know, to externalize something, when you write it out, you don't have to worry about it because you'll remember all of that later. And you can then create a schedule for yourself for later, or a to-do list that many people love to do. That's absolutely wonderful. I really like that. Thank you for teaching me that. I wanted to go back to the open-ended and closed-ended questions. In psychology, we do the same thing. I actually do it at the checkout line. I swear, everywhere I go, everyone, whether they recognize me or whatever, or they just think I want to hear their life story. So they come up, and if they say something to me, I will respond in a way, I'm very kind, always kind. So anyone who sees me, I'm always kind, but I don't always want to talk to everybody. So when they say something to me, I'm very conscious of open-ended and closed-ended questions. So if they say something to me at all, my wording is very short. And I don't ask anything in return. So when they do ask me an open-ended question, I make sure it's a closed response. So therefore I don't follow the technique that they're using, whether they realize it or not. So if they say, James, how was your day? I say, oh, my day was wonderful. Thank you so much for asking. Or I could say, instead of when they say, how was your day? I can just say, good. And that's it, which is a closed response. So it's important to know the difference. And you know this, of course, but my listeners also, it's important to know when you want to learn something more about someone, just like Cash said earlier, if your question allows for them to say yes or no, that's a closed-ended question, and you're going to do all the work. And when you do all the work, you are the one who's then giving all the emotion and energy to something, and you're not going to get that in return. So if you don't want to talk to someone, make sure, like myself, then you want to make sure that your responses or your questions are closed. So therefore it is a yes or no. So therefore you don't get as much information. So if someone is talking and talking and talking, start to move your questions to closed-ended questions, because it reduces how much of energy they give to you. And if you want to know more, once again, you ask the open-ended questions and you will learn everything that you need to know. And you put a little bit of pause in between that as well, like a split second pause, a little bit more. And then many people who have a higher EQ will want to fill that space. And so they will start to tell you more and more and more. And it's a wonderful technique because you just sometimes don't have to say anything. All of a sudden, they tell your life story like they do at me in the checkout line.
That's so well said. I even have closeout lines, so if I run into someone and they, want to engage for a lot longer, I just say, in my response to how you doing, I said, I'm great. I hope you have a great day. So a closeout response.
Yeah, that's smart. I'm going to use that. If I hear you use that to me,
yeah. When I wrote this book about listening as a martial art, I was talking about mind drift, which is a real problem, right? We all have it. We're all having a conversation, and then all of a sudden I'm thinking, oh man, I just tuned out James and was thinking about something else. Even though I wrote everything down on a piece of paper, I tuned out James. Now, how do I come back? Do I just fake it? Which is what we do. 100% of the time, we all just fake it and hope that maybe you'll refer to it again, or hopefully it won't be on a test or whatever, And I got in the habit of telling people, well, sorry, I apologize. And this is what I tell people to do. Listen, admit it. Confess. Say, you know what? My mind drifted. And I got in the habit of saying, I'm sorry, I apologize. My mind drifted. The last thing I remember you saying is this, my mother popped into my head. And that's understandable. Mm-hmm. And my mother does pop into my head a lot. And so what happened one time was I was interviewing a candidate for a job, and I'm going through it, and very high level position, very intelligent person. And we got to a certain point, and clearly they had lost track. And I could tell from looking at their face that they kind of had lost track. Oh, and the person came back to me and said, I'm sorry, I lost track. I remember the last thing you said was this, I was thinking about my mother. And then they said, yeah, I read your book. I said, oh, that's pretty good. Think about my mother.
That's hysterical. That's a good reframe. But I really like that because like you said, most people are not that transparent about that. And I think that really, not only that, just to me, in my opinion, once again, this is brilliant stuff, that it really reconnects to people, because when you're transparent and vulnerable like that, people can really connect with you. Like, oh yeah, I hear that, because they, like you said, they can relate as well. So the stuff you're teaching us, it's I don't want to say it's not new stuff, but it's so practical that we all need to practice. I don't practice some of these things that you're saying, so now I will. I'm going to use your close-ended responses as well. So, but I will know next time we talk, if I hear you say that, I'm like, wait a minute, I see what you're doing.
I hope you have a good day, James. But it's really interesting. Somebody read one of my listening book and said, well, it's obvious. It's like, yeah, because I'm not trying to tell you things you don't know. I'm trying to give you strategies to change your behavior. And behavioral change is very difficult. If behavioral change was easy, nobody would smoke, drink, and everybody be thin. I mean, it's one of those things where it's very behavioral change, as you know, much more than me, is very difficult. So in order to change behavior, I find it helpful. And what I do in the book is give lots of examples so you can see it in action. So you can see
yes, that's important.
How, where I saw it. I think examples are very important because then it causes you to think at times that you had that. And I think that's the key to learning is that you're able to relate it to something that you have done. You can go back through your memory banks and say, you know what, I remember, and now I see the context in which that technique would make sense. And the other thing I want to pick up on was really beautifully said when you talk about transparency and sincerity. What I tell one of my techniques is stop walking into a conference room or a negotiation or a business meeting like you're Superman or Wonder Woman. Because when you do that, you will not gain trust. What you're going to face if you walk in as Superman, you're going to face Wonder Woman. And if you walk in as Wonder Woman, you're going to face Superman because everybody goes shields up. Everybody goes swords drawn to go back to martial arts. Everybody's like, okay. As opposed to Lieutenant Columbo, for anybody who's ever seen Columbo, who walks in this raincoat that's never been washed, hair that's never been combed, unassuming Peter Falk, and is like, hey, how y'all doing? And then people open up. Even his suspects, his murder suspects, would start telling him everything because he wasn't coming in like, I am Hawaii 5-0 and Steve McGarrett and just the facts. Dragnet, Anyway, So for your baby boomers or even Gen Xers in the audience, those are some hopeful fun reflections.
That is hysterical. No, it's very, very true.
Transparency. The word sincere really means there's a number of opinions on it, but really means without wax, sincere. And when the kings needed a pot, and the potters or the queens would need a pot, the potters would make a pot. Now the problem is you don't want to give the queen or the king something with imperfections. And so you would, any bumps you would sand down and any holes you would fill in with wax. So a pot that was sincere was a pot that didn't try to cover up its imperfections. And if you want trust, show people that you're human just like them. Don't show them you're superior to them. Don't come in like, hey, you should come in as you are. And admitting a mind drift, admitting like, you know what, I lost track. They'd be like, I've only done that 3 times so far in this meeting. I guess we can have a relationship. I guess we can, this person's not out to kill me. We're just a couple of humans trying not to look bad.
Now, the problem is, though, when I'm hearing this, is I'm sure some people probably have multiple mind drifts in a conversation. So I'm sure there's probably a limit of how many times you can say, hey, I'm sorry, I had a mind drift.
If you find yourself saying it more than twice, you should just meet another time. That would be another honest thing to say. I got some bad news. It's like, no matter how hard I try, I can't get my mother out of my head.
That's funny. Well, I always tell people as well. So when it comes to having a conversation, there are 3 criteria: is it the right time? Is it the right place, physically place? And is the person emotionally available? And if they're not, then if one of those criteria are not met, then it's important to revisit it to make sure all 3 criteria are met so you can have the most meaningful conversation.
What were those 3 again?
Is it the right time? Is it the right place, location? And is the person emotionally available?
That's good. I like that. Now we're even. I'm taking that.
There you go. Well, unfortunately, Cash, our time is up. I had such a great time talking with you. If my listeners want to find out more information about you and to purchase this phenomenal book, which I highly endorse, Negotiation as a Martial Art, Techniques to Master the Arts of Human Exchange, where would they find this information online?
So the best way to find additional information is cashnickerson.com, which is my website. As far as buying the book, it's available everywhere books can be bought, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and all the, traditional outlets. So readily available. I have more and more sort of content that I'm putting out to my website, videos, etc. It's just building up, trying to build
Awesome.
around feedback that I'm getting.
Perfect. Well, my listeners know that if they cannot find this information any other place, simply go to the show notes at jamesmillerlifeology.com, and I'll have all of Cash Nickerson's information. Thank you so much for being a wonderful guest on my show today.
Thank you. I loved it.